comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government.
We are back. Golenbock University. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we have a panel tonight. Joining me to talk to Peter is the usual, the third baseball Meshuggah, Alan Blumkin. Al, how are you tonight?
Okay.
Oh, good. And Robert Cole, who is a fellow podcaster on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Robert is a co-host of the Mets show, an avid Tampa Ray fan.
It's not Tampa. It's Tampa Bay. It is not Tampa. The team plays in St. Petersburg, not in Tampa, and it's the Tampa Bay Rays, not the Tampa Bay
Rays.
Thank you.
Okay. Peter, it's only been 2 years that we've been doing this, so you have to realize I'm very slow.
No, it says something about the Tampa Bay Rays and how little regard the people of the rest of the country have for our wonderful team. That's really what it says.
The confusion comes in twofold. One is the Devil Rays. When they were the Devil Rays, how did going about to being the Rays get started? How did that come about?
Well, originally they were supposed to be the Stingrays. A fellow by the name of Vince Namoli, who was sort of semi-crooked but not quite, was the owner of our team. And what he did for a living is he would buy corporations and he would get rid of all of their employees, resell the corporation, and make himself a small fortune. You know, he was one of those guys. So he bought the team, and he decided what he was going to do, which is what this guy Culverhouse, who owned the Bucks, did the same thing. He decided that winning had nothing to do with this, that everything had to do with making as much frickin' money as he possibly could. And he made himself a small fortune. But at any rate, he was going to call this team the Stingrays, which is quite a wonderful name. You know, you've got the car, and it's got a wonderful sort of teen image. It's really quite terrific.
Right.
But there was a team in Hawaii called the Stingrays, the Hawaiian Stingrays. And the Stingrays wanted $100,000 from Namoli to use the name. And the cheap SOB, rather than paying the $100 for Stingrays, decided, well, let's pick the biggest ray in the ocean. So what was the biggest ray in the ocean, quite frankly? It was something called a devil ray. It was like 20 feet wide. It's a big friggin' fish. It is big. But unfortunately, when you're in the South and you put the word devil into the name of your team, you tend to infuriate all of those born-agains who hate the idea. I mean, they might like the idea that eventually, you know, Jesus will show up and we're all going to, you know, be saved, but they didn't like the idea of calling the team the Devil Rays. So, I mean, that's how it started. And when Stu Sternberg and his boys bought the team from Namoli back in, say, 2006, they decided that one of the things they wanted to do is get rid of the word devil. So they did. So that told the world that there was, you know, new bunch of leadership on the team. And so instead of the Devil Rays, they're now the incredibly boring Rays, which is about as terrible a name as you could possibly name it. I mean, they had come to me and they had said, well, you know, here we are, we're a new bunch. You know, what can we do to make you happy? Because I had written a scathing article about Namoli in the newspaper. And so I said, you know, we really should change the name of the team to the Pelicans. We had a senior league team, senior professional baseball league team called the Pelicans. We won the championship, and everybody loved the idea that the mascot was a pelican. But they thought that was too radical. They thought changing it from Devil Rays to Pelican was too much, and so they disregarded my advice, and they called this team the Rays.
Okay. Now, was it ever considered to call them the St. Petersburg whatever at the beginning?
No, never. Not ever. Not ever, ever, ever. It's like the Minnesota Twins. They don't call them the Minneapolis Twins. They don't call them the St. Paul Twins. They call them the Minneapolis Twins. And
right.
for a very good reason. They want fans of both Minneapolis and St. Paul to come to the games. Likewise, here in South Florida, they want fans of Tampa and fans of St. Petersburg to come to the games. And so they call the team Tampa Bay.
How come that never occurred to the Pelican owners to call them Tampa Bay?
Well, they were the Tampa Bay Pelicans.
They were the.
Oh no, actually,
okay.
I think we were the St. Pete Pelicans. Come to think of it,
it was St. Pete Pelicans.
It was the St. Pete Pelicans. It's because the owners. I don't know. It's a very good question. It's a very, very good question. The owners figured,
makes
I
up for
suppose,
my stupidity of not knowing.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. It's something I hadn't really thought about until right about now. And maybe they thought.
Well, I'm always 40 years late.
The fans were not going to come across the Courtney Campbell Expressway and the Howard Franklin bridges to go see the team anyway.
Well, that's still a question today.
Yeah.
Peter. No,
yeah, I know.
People won't come over from Tampa, yell and scream about, making that trip all the way over.
All I know is when I lived in Stamford, Connecticut, I had to get on the New Haven Hartford Railroad to go to Grand Central Station and then jumped on the Lex to go to Yankee Stadium. Took me an hour and a half. Never bothered me, not for a second. For these people in Tampa to have to drive, half an hour, 40 minutes to come to the games and complain about it just absolutely drives me crazy.
Oh, yeah, and that's one of the biggest problems with trying to get a stadium down here now.
Well, I mean, they're going to have a problem when they put a stadium in Tampa. Already, the attendance has gone from last year's 15,000 down to this year's 11,000 because there are 4,000 4,000 St. Petersburg fans who are so angry that they're moving.
Right. But, I mean, in my opinion, the best place is over on the other side.
Could very well be.
Yeah,
could very well be. We'll see.
Yeah.
We shall see. It seems to me that whether a team draws or not, more than anything else, is determined by the man who owns the team, by the ownership. Part of the problem that the Tampa Bay Rays has is that the owner is from Westchester County and never leaves his home in Westchester County. You never see this man from one day to the next. He talks about his allegiance to the Brooklyn Dodgers and to the Mets. And he always talks about the fact that he's got to cut the budget because he doesn't have enough money to run a baseball team. And so people are put off by this guy. They want a team that's going to win. And he never seems to tell them that, hey, we're going to have a team that's going to win. And a certain number of the fans say, okay, we love your team, but we're going to watch the game on television or we're going to listen on the radio. We're not going to come to the games. And that's pretty much what has happened here in Tampa Bay.
So attendance is down 10% all over.
Well, that's part of the millennials on their little devices.
Yeah, and basically it's teams that don't put the product on the field. Yeah.
Well, that's also the fact. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you're a real baseball fan, I don't care who's out there. When the 1962 Mets were out there with Al Moran at shortstop, it still was a major league team, and I was thrilled to go to the Polo Grounds to watch that team play because they were in the major leagues.
How old were you at the time?
How old was I at the time? I was born in 46, and this was 62, 63.
16. It's a lot different.
No.
It's a lot different.
16-year-olds now won't go at all.
Yeah. It's a lot different. Yeah.
Baseball has turned off the kids in the last 15, 20 years.
And those days it was $1.50 to go to a game.
Well, so now it's $11. So what?
Yeah, but you don't have fans because baseball, like I say, turned off the kids. They don't play the All-Star game during the day. They don't play World Series during the day. Kids don't get to see ball. Their family could only take them once or twice a year because it's $80 a shot when you go out there. It's their coming to roost. If baseball's losing attendance, it's because they haven't built a fan base with this new millennium. And
they're trying and trying. What the Rays have done for the kids in the community is just awesome. They go out reading for the Rays. They go out and they fix up ballparks everywhere in Tampa Bay, in both Tampa and St. Petersburg. They send their people out to do wonderful things in the community. They do a tremendous amount. And they know from taking polls that they have a problem. But the really strange thing is they just don't know what to do about it. They haven't figured out how to get those kids who are sitting home playing video games off their behinds and out of their houses to come to the games. And that's not just baseball. That's true of football and basketball and hockey and soccer. It's become a very, very difficult problem. The Internet has created serious problems for professional sports.
Yeah, and that we can get every game on TV.
And that's the other part of it. Of course, you can stream the games. You can sit and play video games with your right hand and watch the game on your little video machine with the other hand. You don't have to go to the
you'd have to have that to have a really good day. You'd have to have three hands.
Yeah, another offshoot of that is I have all the old sporting news guides and registers that they put out for years and years. And you can't get rid of them because everybody who's my age group, which is now 75, wants to get rid of them. A friend of mine wanted to get rid of some. I told him, go on eBay. You'll find 100 people trying to get rid of this stuff.
I have one of the largest collections of baseball books in America. I mean, I've got hundreds and hundreds of different books.
Yeah.
That once upon a time were worth a small fortune.
Yeah.
And now basically you can't give them away. You just can't.
The reference books especially because everything's on baseballreference.com. A couple of other sites.
Right.
You don't need it anymore.
No, you don't. You know, hello Google, what's the score of the Rays game? And it pops up and tells you. And
not only in words it tells you the Rays are winning.
Yes, they'll talk to you. To you.
The other night, my iPad crashed Friday. I didn't get it back working until Saturday. And so I was listening to the Yankee games Friday night, and I had to wait through all their post-game crap so I could get an update on other scores.
Hey, can I segue a little?
Your show. Segue away.
I will segue to the Brooklyn Dodgers, and I want to make this the Ask Peter episode or whatever. We'll have a little Ask Peter. And I'm going to start with our guest, Robert Cole, who is a baseball historian. And I wonder if there's anything that you would like to ask Peter, anything you're clear about in his writings. For those of you who don't know, Peter wrote, arguably, it could be Boys of Summer by Kahn, or it could be Bums by Peter Golenbock. I'm not going to take sides.
Well, there are two books that go side by side, quite frankly. I mean, Roger wrote a most magnificent book about the 2 years he spent with the Dodgers in 1952 and 1953. The first half of The Boys of Summer, next to the Glory of Their Times, by Larry, what's Larry's last name?
Ritter.
Larry Ritter.
I know him. Yeah.
The first half of The Boys of Summer and Larry Ritter's The Glory of Their Times are the two greatest baseball books ever written. Period. They're just stunning in how fabulous they were. Roger's a marvelous, marvelous writer, and he spent that time with Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese and all those people and wrote about it in a most magnificent way. So I had the pleasure of going around the country and interviewing as many as the Brooklyn Dodgers who were alive at the time. Jackie had died, and one or two of the other players had also passed away. But I had the pleasure of being able to interview Pee Wee and Ferrillo and Campanella and Newcomb and on and on and on and on. And that gave me an opportunity to write a different kind of book and that was a book that was from the point of view not of a sports writer. Roger was a sports writer, but from the point of view of the players.
Yeah, I must admit, I've read that. I have it, and I've read it at least half a dozen times.
And how many times? Dynasty and the Forever Boy.
Yeah, Dynasty.
And, over and over and over, you can read these books and pick up something on each time. To say nothing of all what my new hobby is, finding out as much about Billy Martin as I possibly can, and his relationship with Steinbrenner. My God, Peter, this is what a career.
Yep.
And
I tell you, I was one lucky boy.
You were. Luck is the residue of hard work and preparedness. All those cliches that happen to be true. But there are a lot of guys who fall into something for the first time, but to maintain it for 50 years, I mean, that's not luck.
You mean I'm not 28 years old anymore? Jesus, what happened?
Well, we're all amazingly. I'm 71. You're 71. Robert is 71, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm the old man. I'm 75.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. It doesn't seem old to me. It used to
seem old to me.
But
no.
No.
When you get to when you get to 70, 80, it doesn't seem all that old.
On this very show, we talked to 90-plus-year-old Dr. Bobby Brown, and he was every bit as articulate as he has ever been in his life.
He was at Yankee Stadium for the Old Timers Day today.
Yeah.
Hasn't lost a step.
Yeah, Whitey could hardly get out of the dugout, because he just came out of the dugout. Whitey Ford, who's 89, came out of the dugout, waved, and went back in. He's having trouble.
Whitey Ford, of course, spent his career with Mickey and with Billy for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And they lived 3 lives.
Yeah.
Bobby Brown, who became
Bobby Brown is not, I think, 94
Bobby Brown
now.
was drinking wine when everybody else was drinking whiskey. So Bobby Brown.
He
still was able to get out there without that much difficulty.
Oh, he looked fine, Bobby Brown.
Yep.
The guy that
and was Eddie Robinson not
He's still
there
alive, but he wasn't there. Bobby Brown is the only survivor of the 1947 team.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how many of the people who I interviewed who are no longer alive. It's just
with the Yankees,
most of them, and with the Brooklyn Dodgers, it's almost everybody.
Well, there weren't as many with the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Is still alive, and Newcomb is 90.
Ed Roebuck just passed the other day.
Which is Ed Roebuck, who was wonderful.
Yeah,
he was a scout at the time I was doing that book, and
he
we were out
passed
in
the other
California,
day.
and we went to see high school players play. He and I went to see high school players play.
Oh, wow.
But you have to admit there were at least twice as many Yankees because the Dodgers were gone from Brooklyn after 1957.
Well, I interviewed a lot of Yankees, and I interviewed a lot of Dodgers. A lot of them. A lot of both.
A lot of Red Sox, too.
A lot of Red Sox, a lot of St. Louis Cardinals, a lot of St. Louis Browns, and a hell of a lot of Chicago Cubs.
I hate to bring this up, as Alan and I did kind of a eulogy to Red Shadings on the Cardinals show on this network. Yep. What are your memories of Red Shadings?
He and their other star,
Stan Musial.
Stan Musial were as nice a twosome as you'd ever want to run across. They were true gentlemen. Both wonderful, wonderful people. They couldn't have been nicer. They loved the game of baseball. I mean, Shane Deese was amazing. Shane Deese never wanted to leave the game, never. And he was smart enough as both a manager and a coach and a scout or whatever he wanted to be. I think he was still in the game at the time he died at age 90.
95, yeah.
95, yeah.
And a couple of St. Louis sportscasters, they posted a video on Facebook saying that he was in his 90s. He could still pick out players who could play and players who couldn't.
Why not? Why would he not? Sure, of course he could.
Just as I was saying, 90 doesn't have to mean that you're feeble and incapacitated.
No, but it's very difficult.
A certain amount of luck goes with that one, though.
Yeah.
No question. It's a lot of it is genetics. A lot of it is that you just didn't get hit by a bus.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, my once close friend Jim Boughton, when I lived in Englewood, he and I were like brothers for years, and now he's got dementia, and
he was out there today at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I understand he was, but
it was not pretty.
No,
he had to be helped out there.
Yeah, it's just incredibly sad.
Yeah.
He was the smartest. He was the most fun.
He appeared at the New York Sabre National Convention last year, and his wife, was coming off a stroke, and his wife had to do was a speech therapist.
Yeah.
Had to do most of the talking.
Yeah, I know.
It's really sad.
She's a speech therapist and a psychologist.
Psychologist. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's unbelievable. He was just a tremendous. He was a tremendous ball player. He was a tremendous writer. He was a great friend. He was all of those things. It's just very sad.
Yeah. That's my grandmother used to warn me about that. It's nice to get old, but being the last person standing is not necessarily the prize. That could be the booby prize.
Well, you just live your life a day at a time. Worry about today, worry about tomorrow. That's what I say.
Okay, we're getting close to it. Robert, any questions for Peter about the history of the Dodgers or anything? Writing books, living life? What would you like to ask?
Well, actually, Peter and I met each other several years ago.
Sure.
Peter was our guest speaker at our umpire's end-of-year banquet. I don't know if you remember that, Peter.
Of course I do.
SUA.
Sure, I still have the shirt. I actually still wear the shirt.
And I don't know if you know it, but Peter did a lot of work in St. Pete, trying to get the kids involved in the inner city.
Yep, I did.
Trying to get that all revived, and did a lot of work. That never came to fruition, though, did it, Peter?
Well, I managed to put together a JV circuit for 5 years because in Pinellas County we didn't have JV for some reason. They didn't spend the money on JVs, and so the poor freshmen never got the chance to play on the varsity. So with 5 years of JV, at least for those 5 years at any rate, I could have 9th and 10th graders, playing a 20, 25 game schedule, and I did that for a while, and that worked out.
Right.
I mean, the interesting thing is I went to the South Side one time with a friend of mine, and I said to the people who ran the Wildwood League, I said, look, we've got some very, very good coaches. We would love to come to Wildwood and work with your kids. And basically they said to us, we're not interested. So
really?
that was kind of the end of that.
Yeah.
That's amazing that they would turn that down.
No, it's not. No, it's not. You've got to understand. It's just, it's perfectly understandable. It really is. And my guess, if I were an African American, some, arrogant white guy came to me, I'd probably do the same thing. Go tell him to take a hike. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally different. That's for sure.
Yep.
How often were you able to get to Ebbets Field, Peter?
Never.
Never
got to Ebbets Field. Not ever.
Oh.
I went to Yankee Stadium, and I only got to the Polo Grounds because after the Giants left, the Mets played their first 2 or 3 years at the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, first 2 years.
I loved the Polo Grounds. I just thought that was just a wonderful, wonderful stadium. And I was really upset when they left it and went over to Shea. Shea was a very mediocre ballpark.
Cookie cutter.
That was the cookie cutters.
Yeah, it was Shea and Cincinnati Park and Pittsburgh Park and a couple others.
Philadelphia and St. Louis.
Philadelphia.
The only way you could tell the difference was by the advertising on the scoreboard.
That's right.
Especially the ones with the artificial turf.
They were round and not very, very interesting.
Yeah,
the only
Cincinnati had
at that time was Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, Dodger Stadium was wonderful.
Yeah,
Dodger Stadium was wonderful.
O'Malley was the one that started that whole thing of all the cookie cutter stadiums.
Well, basically, they had the cookie cutters to house both the baseball and professional football teams.
Football, that's right.
Yeah.
The only one who did it right during that whole period was Kansas City. They built separate stadiums.
That's right.
For a lot cheaper than it was when everybody else decided to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was $5 million to build a stadium back then. So, just putting it.
Well, here in Tampa Bay, they built this stadium in 1986 with the idea of if we build it, they will come. That was the notion, and it was funny. We didn't start playing. The team. They announced that the team would exist somewhere around 1994 or 5, and then we started playing in 1998. But this stadium was 12, 13 years old before we ever played a ball game in it.
Didn't they expect first the White Sox and then the Giants to wind up there?
Oh, we expected. There must have been 5 teams that used St. Petersburg.
Reds.
Yeah,
Reds,
but they twisted everybody's arms to build them stadiums. Otherwise, they said that they were going to go to Tampa Bay.
Right.
The closest they came, the very closest they came, was the Giants, and the only reason the Giants didn't come here was because of Bill White. Bill White was the president of the National League. When he was with the Cardinals, they trained in St. Petersburg. And the St. Petersburg Yacht Club invited all the white players, would not invite the black players. The black players could not stay in the same hotels as the white players. They couldn't drink out of the same drinking fountains. They had to sit in the back of the bus. It was horrendous. And Bill White never forgave St. Petersburg for that. So when he heard that the Giants, that the Giant ownership was thinking of selling to St. Petersburg, he went out as fast as he could, and he found the current owners of the Giants, Peter, what's his last name?
Well, they're not the current owners.
Well, okay.
He found Laurie and Herser.
No, long name.
Peter McGowan.
McGowan.
Yeah.
He went and got Peter McGowan to buy the Giants to keep them in San Francisco, so the Giants would not go to St. Petersburg. And I know that that's a true story because Bill told me that story.
Well, he also had an ally in Peter O'Malley. Peter O'Malley rallied the forces. He didn't want the Giants leaving San Francisco because that would break up the natural rivalry that.
That makes a lot of sense too. Yes, very good.
In fact, Peter made the announcement that we can't do to the poor San Francisco Giants fans and let them leave. Okay,
what he did to
basically the same thing that his father did.
Right. I love irony.
Yeah.
Yes, that is ironic. That's incredible. Mr. Blumkin, anything you'd like to ask Peter about anything?
Yeah, Peter, did you get to talk to Yogi when you did Dynasty?
Absolutely.
How was he?
Absolutely, I talked to Yogi when I did Dynasty. They made fun of Yogi. They said he wasn't handsome. They said he wasn't smart. Let me tell you something. Yogi Berra lived in a mansion. He had a beautiful wife. He had expensive cars. He had lovely children. He had his first nickel. Whatever Yogi would invest in, he would make a small fortune. Whatever Mickey would invest in would go broke.
Yep.
It was just hysterical. Yogi was a lovely, lovely, lovely man who was supremely talented as a baseball player. And in terms of smart, he was as smart a baseball person as anybody was. You just have to, you look at his numbers, you look at the fact that he won a pennant for the Yankees in '64, He won a pennant for the Mets in '73. How could he be bad? How could he be dumb? If
he also has the record for catching double headers, which is incredible.
He was an Iron Man.
Yeah.
He was an absolute Iron Man.
Yeah.
But so much fun is to look at the list of catchers who the Yankees signed, who eventually sold to other teams around the league. There must have been 10 of them. There must be
Sherman Lawler and Triandos.
That's right.
Hal Smiths and
the Washington Senators catcher.
Lou Berberek, that's what Casey Stengel said about Yogi. He said, "You think he's funny? He's got a tremendous house, a tremendous family, money in the bank, and people think he's funny."
Casey Stengel called Yogi Berra my man.
Yeah.
When my man is out there, I know we're going to win. That was Yogi.
Let me ask you guys, when Casey retired, how come Wes Westrom got the job and not Yogi? I'm just curious.
Stupid. How about stupid? Just stupid. Whoever made the decision was stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, there were, for some reason, there was a certain amount of resentment against Yogi. I'm not even sure where that came from. And I think there was a sort of for some people, sort of a general notion that maybe Yogi wasn't that smart.
No, I think he was too closely identified with the Yankees.
Yeah, that may be it too.
Yeah.
Although he and Spahn finished up their career with the Mets, and they were the oldest battery in history.
Yeah, one of my favorite Casey stories is, they in 1962 they picked up Gene Woodling. So he's sitting on the bench with Casey Stengel, and they're watching the Mets blow another one. It says, Casey turns to Woodling and says, "Ain't like it used to be, is it?"
Yeah, right. Well, it's funny. Woodling is funny. When I wrote Dynasty, it was 1,000 pages long.
Yeah.
And the editor made me cut it in half. And so it was excruciating because I had to cut out some mildly interesting stuff about sort of the lesser players, and Woodling was one of them. I mean, the Woodling interview was absolutely wonderful, and the editor cut it out. And I have to tell you, Woodling never forgave me for cutting it out. He was really pissed. Yeah.
Peter, was there a new edition of Dynasty?
There is a new edition of Dynasty somewhere along the line.
Where can people get it?
Well, usually on Amazon, where you get everything else. But what happened was that I discovered in the shelves of my bookcase, I had the original 150 pages the way I wrote it when I first wrote it, before it was cut. And it was all the wonderful stuff about Larry McPhail and Larry McPhail getting in a fight with George Weiss and the pennant of 47 and what happened in 48 and how they... Anyhow, Dover let me put, we made a new book where Dover let me put the first 150 pages back the way I had originally written it. So the newest edition has that. And it's really very, very interesting.
Definitely look for that. Anything, Robert?
Nobody has any questions for me about the Brooklyn Dodgers?
Well, no, I'm asking Robert. Anything else?
Well, Robert probably knows everything there is to know.
Well, not quite. I must say, though, in Dynasty, I think one of the funniest parts of that was when you're talking about Phil Rizzuto in his rookie year.
I love that.
I took him out snipe hunting.
Yes, and Rizzuto told me those stories. This is what I adored about these players. They were so open about, who they were. Tell the story, Robert. It's a hysterically wonderful story. Go ahead.
Rizzuto was a rookie in spring training, and some of the veterans said, we're going to go out. We're going to go snipe hunting. Okay? And so they let Phil out of the car somewhere in the swamps of Florida. Okay? And then they took off. And Phil had to find his way back.
Yeah. He must have been 10 miles from where they were.
Right.
But the funniest part was then about a week later they said to Phil, we're going to play the same gag on this rookie. Come with us with the rookie, and we'll put him out there and leave him. And what they did, they were in on it with the rookie. So they and the rookie took off, leaving Phil back out in the middle of nowhere a second time, 10 miles from wherever they were. He was so gullible.
Well, and with they talk a lot about them putting bugs in his glove.
Yes,
they leave the gloves out on the field.
They put worms in his gloves.
Yeah.
Back then, they used to leave the gloves out on the field. They used to bring the gloves into the clubhouse.
Right.
And they used to go out and put worms and spiders. Phil was deathly afraid of spiders. And so
he's afraid of anything that moved. Yeah.
Yeah, they put these things in his glove and sit back and watch, because Phil would put the glove in his hand and you'd watch him throw that thing 20 feet up in the air. They would all be laughing. The night before he was to get married, his teammates on Norfolk grabbed him, pulled his pants down, and painted his genitals blue with gentian violet. Because they figured that on his wedding night, his poor wife would be wondering what the hell had happened to him. It's just, it's just too funny for words.
Yeah. Well, you tell a great story, Peter, in the book about DiMaggio. They take batting practice, and DiMaggio defended him. Everybody was boxing him out when it came time for his turn, and DiMaggio says, "I don't care how small he is, 5'6". He takes batting practice with all of us, and that because those guys wouldn't accept rookies. Or did
they wouldn't accept the rookies because those are the guys who were going to take their jobs.
Yeah,
right.
So they were protecting
there's
their
no
jobs.
Fallback. There was nothing.
No.
Now, I'll ask you this. This is totally off the subject, but on the subject of how much these jobs meant to these guys, there was a book by the former commissioner. It says, "We play this game for nothing." And interviews
Vincent.
Robert
Vincent,
and all these guys. They were big into getting a union formed. They weren't into playing the game for nothing. Those days were romanticized in the sense that the golden age of baseball, it was real tough for these guys coming out of the service, losing all those prime years and trying to get back into it. They were some tough sons of bitches.
Well, see, on one level, yes, they would have played the game for nothing because they adored the game so much. But if you go back to the 1919 Chicago White Sox, where the owner of the White Sox says to Eddie Cicotte, if you win 30 games, I'll give you a $10,000 bonus. So the guy wins 29 games, and the manager sits him for 2.5 weeks to keep him from the 30th win so that Comiskey doesn't have to pay him the $10,000 bonus. When you run into things like that, at some point the players say to themselves, this is really unfair. The reserve clause had been initiated in 1872 by Albert Spalding, who was the owner of the White Sox. This is a period now where the owners were now in charge and the players were...
and Arthur Soden, Boston, was the one who put it in fruition.
Yeah. So in other words, if at the end of the season, the season was over, you were not free to sign with anybody else. The reserve clause said that the team would reserve you for another year.
Yeah.
So you had no negotiating rights whatsoever.
Yeah, the only times during that whole period was when the American League was formed and when the Federal League came into existence. The only two times in that whole era that players got were able to get decent money.
The Players League and the Federal League, and both those times because the players had
and
no
the American
ability
League.
to run teams.
Started, yeah,
the American League when it started, but very quickly the American and the National League, they both joined.
They
together.
agreed, and it went back to
They went
the
back
old way,
to the old way of doing it. I mean, to hear, they had a pitcher, the Black Sox pitcher Cicotte. The guy wins 29 games and he's making a salary of $5,000, $6,000. I mean, Joe Jackson in that year, if I remember correctly, was making a salary of $4,000. I mean, these guys. Comiskey was a real son of a bitch.
Yeah, he was.
He made sure his players didn't get very much. Tyko was probably making 20, maybe 25. But then, of course, when Ruth came along in the 20s, in the early 20s, he started making $75,000 a year, $100,000 a year, and the players were becoming very, very upset by what was happening to them. And who knows if Marvin Miller hadn't come along in the late 70s. It might be the same, the same damn thing. But Marvin Miller was the guy. He was the head of the Major League Players Association, and he was smarter than Bowie Kuhn, and he was smarter than all of the owners, and he figured out the way to get his players free agency.
Yeah, Robin Roberts was the one who brought him into the union.
Brought him into it, yes. And it was sheer genius on Marvin Miller's part. At the point where he got Messersmith and McNally to play out the season without signing a contract. And then he got the owners, not realizing what they were doing, to agree to a 3-person arbitration team to decide issues. He then took the question, when the season is over and they haven't signed a contract, are they free agents? So they went to the 3 arbitrators. One was a league arbitrator, one was a players arbitrator, the third one was by a guy named Peter Seitz, who was supposed to be neutral. And Seitz sided with the players and freed all these guys. But Miller, smarter than they were, said, okay, I'm not freeing everybody. I'm only going to free the guys who have played 10 years in the league and 5
years. 6 years. It was 6 years, and they could request trades after 5.
So what happened was there were like 16 to 20 guys who were now free. And every single one of those guys made $1 million or more.
Well, they saw what happened when Finley violated, 2 years before that, violated the terms of the Catfish Hunt contract, and he was declared free agent and went to the Yankees.
And got
that was a spur, yeah.
That was the spur. That's exactly right. Yep. But you wonder if Marvin Miller hadn't come along, what might have happened? Because every other head of the players' union used to join hands with the commissioner, and basically screw the players. It was amazing. There must have been 3 or 4 of them, so starting 1948, who were head of the players' union. Marvin Miller freed these guys from the clutches of the owners, and then managed to get free agency for all of them. It was just, you look and see what Miller did, and it was sheer genius, and the guy is still not in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
And he never will be because...
Yes, he will. Yes, he will. Yes, he will.
I don't think
he will. So. Joe Jackson will. They will. It's just a matter of time. Pete Rose will, too. And so will Barry Bonds. And so will Roger Clemens. They'll all be in the Hall of Fame one day, because you can't have a Hall of Fame without those guys. You just can't. Keeping them out is just friggin' stupid.
Yeah. Well, eventually, when they start losing visitors going up there, because none of these kids can identify with any of the players who weren't in the steroidal era, you're right.
It's funny. You talk about losing visitors. The Baseball Hall of Fame, could be in China for all we know. To get there, you've got to drive over 3 mountains to get to Cooperstown. It is really a schlep to get to that place.
Yeah, they put in a number of years ago. They put in Interstate 88, which you can pick up from the thruway, and it cuts that travel time down quite a bit.
Oh, very good. You don't have to go over those mountains anymore?
No.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah, one of the things that also amazed me is that when they said that the Pro Football Union gave judge and jury powers to the commissioner, Roger Goodell, I said to a friend of mine, "Can you ever see the baseball players doing that?"
No.
Of course not. Even the basketball players would never do that either.
Marvin Miller was just smarter and tougher than any of these other people. Bowie, he realized right from the beginning that Bowie Kuhn was basically a face. You know, he was an idiot.
Yeah.
That Bowie Kuhn had no, he had no ability as a lawyer. He had no ability to argue. He had no ability to, oppose him. So, Miller basically had a pushover to battle.
But, some people said that, they lowered the Hall of Fame standards with Selig. I said they lowered it with Bowie Kuhn.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Every commissioner gets to be
if they're around long enough.
Doesn't matter.
If they're around long enough, they get in. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they're not along. One of the greatest commissioners was Happy Chandler. He was in 5-6 years, and they kicked him out because he allowed Jackie Robinson into baseball.
Yep.
If you can allow one of the worst racists in Kennesaw Mountain Landis from 1920 to 1944, keeping out African Americans from baseball. If you can allow him in the Hall of Fame, for crying out loud, you can let Joe Jackson and Pete Rose in.
How about Yorkie? Same thing.
No, don't get me started on Yorkie.
Same thing with Yorkie. Absolutely the same thing. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Don't get me started with Yorkie.
Rogers Hornsby was in the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, Rogers Hornsby. Tyko was a perfect gentleman compared to Hornsby.
That's right.
Hornsby's one of the worst human beings ever to play in the major leagues.
Whoa.
Well, boy, he could hit. I'll tell you what.
I didn't know
he could hit.
About the Ku Klux
Yeah, that he could do.
He could hit.
But there had to be a reason after the stint with the Cardinals when he was a different team every year.
Well, I had a chance to interview some of his teammates when I think he was the manager of the Browns for a while.
Yeah. They hated his guts.
They just hated him.
Then they gave
who you interviewed, I'll bet it was Joe DeMaestri was a Brown, because I interviewed him too.
I interviewed DeMaestri for the Yankees. I never interviewed him for the Browns.
He was the A's regular shortstop for about 6-7 years. Yeah.
He might have been able to tell you that.
Oh, DeMaestri was wonderful. He was a wonderful interview, DeMaestri was. He was terrific, but unfortunately, he ended up on the cutting room floor along with Gene Woodring.
Oh. Well, does we get to read about him in the 150 pages?
No, you don't. Okay. 150 pages go up through 49. So it's the extra 100 pages that have to do with buying the team from Larry McPhail.
Peter, I wanted to ask you about Carl Furillo.
Okay.
What was he like?
He was wonderful. He was absolutely wonderful. I'm sitting in his kitchen interviewing this guy, and he's got this giant parrot sitting on his shoulder.
Oh.
It was such a character. And what was funny is the thing that upset him the most is apparently when Robinson came up that he was one of those people who signed that petition. Because when that first Jackie Robinson movie came out, the one that came out, I think 1951, 52, something like that, there was an Italian player who was seen as being part of that group signing the petition against Robinson. And, of course, it didn't take Furillo very much time after that to become a very close friend of Robinson's. The two of them, very, very soon afterwards, they played catch together. They were buddies together.
Yeah. But Carl wasn't a big fan of Leo DeRocher.
Well,
he hated DeRocher.
Leo DeRocher is that's also an incredibly interesting what would have been, because DeRocher never had the opportunity to manage Robinson. The irony about that is that all through the 1930s, the sports editor of the Daily Worker, who's this wonderful, wonderful reporter, who I interviewed for my In the Country of Brooklyn book, during the 30s, he would interview certain managers and players, and DeRocher would tell him, absolutely, there are a bunch of players in the Negro Leagues who can play Major League Baseball right now. To the point where Kennesaw Mountain Landis called DeRocher into his office and told him to shut up, to keep quiet about the African Americans playing in the Negro Leagues.
Wow.
But DeRocher, the irony was that DeRocher was banned for a year from baseball for hanging out with gamblers.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny because Larry McPhail was hanging out with the same gamblers. And nobody said a word about Larry. Yeah. So I don't know.
The thing is also, DeRocher actually did manage Robinson for a couple of months before he switched to the Giants in 1948.
Correct, yeah.
But you're right, he didn't manage Robinson when Robinson threw all that nonsense in his rookie year.
And I think he antagonized Robinson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah,
antagonized Ferrullo hated his guts. I know about that. That was very prominent in your book about Ferrullo. He said he couldn't stand DeRocher.
Well, DeRocher was very much like Billy Martin in a way.
Yeah.
DeRocher didn't really care whether his players liked him or not. All DeRocher cared about was they gave the old 110%. And DeRocher could be very caustic. He could be really sort of a nasty guy, as I suppose Billy could too. Robinson, was tough enough. Robinson certainly would have handled DeRocher just fine. I don't think that would have been a problem. But it's interesting because, DeRocher went to the Giants, took the team to pennants in 1951 and 1954. So DeRocher
he got along. One thing about DeRocher, he may have been the biggest SOB in the world, but he never saw color.
Never.
Like
Never.
Billy Martin, the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what I'm telling you. When the reporter came to DeRocher when he was managing in the 30s, and they came to him and said, "Hey, are there any African Americans who can play?" DeRocher said, "Absolutely." They used to barnstorm against each other. Satchel Paige and John Gibson and Judy Johnson and Cool Papa Bell. I mean, he saw them. He saw them all and played against them. And he knew how great they were.
Hey, Alan, would you give me the best Hornsby book that's out there? Because I'm intrigued now with Roger.
I think Charles Alexander wrote a biography of him.
Yeah, very nice book.
And he wrote an autobiography. It came out, he was only with the Mets for 1 year before he dropped dead in the winter of 62-63, called almost like a Ted Williams book, but it's very, very opinionated. And he tried to play down the racial. What I remember as a kid when he got fired from the Browns, I was 9. And then, I read about the trophy that the Browns players presented to Vec for getting rid of him. And then about a month before the season ended, he was hired by Cincinnati, and he managed them in most of '53 when there's a player revolt against him there. That was the last managerial
he was a coach on that original Met team, along with
he was a coach. Yeah, he was a coach.
He could not understand. He could not understand why players could not do the things that he did. That was part of the problem. That plus being a stone-cold racist, those were the two problems.
Yeah.
And he also had a big feud with Roger Maris. They asked him to pose with Maris.
And so now posed with 260 hitters, right?
Yeah. I don't know what that was all about. That was just friggin' dumb.
No, he went to, the Giants got him for fresh, and he played 1 year with them. McGraw couldn't stand him, shipped him to the Braves. And he had 387 for the Braves. They shipped him to the Cubs. I mean,
he traded for Frankie Frisch to St. Louis.
Yeah, he alienated a lot of people.
Well, he did, but for 4 years, I think he hit something like 410 or better.
There's no doubt he was, still probably the greatest right-handed hitter of all time. But
he was.
Personality-wise, he was just rotten.
And it's funny because they write these books about Ty Cobb, and they made that magnificent movie with Tommy Lee Jones playing Ty Cobb.
Oh, yeah.
And yet you don't see that sort of thing about him.
No, he wasn't big enough.
No. Why wasn't he big enough? I don't know.
They made three movies about Babe Ruth.
He was the best second baseman that ever lived.
Oh, without a doubt.
They made 3 movies about Babe Ruth, and all of them were awful.
Yep, that's true. That's very true. I know it.
All right, guys. Beautiful hour. Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
I enjoy your company. Robert,
don't
thank
forget
you for
the Rays play in St. Petersburg now. The Rays play in St. Petersburg. They're the Tampa Bay Rays.
Okay, I've got my homework then.
All right. All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Be well. Thank you for listening, everybody. The show is Golenbock University. It's Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The guest was Robert Cole, regular third Michiganer in the booth, third baseball Michiganer, Alan Blumkin, and I thank the host, Peter Golenbock. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all. Adios, everybody.